Hi guys, and welcome to another quick revision video on the American War of Independence, or the American Revolution from 1776 till 1783. So this comes before the French Revolution and before the 1798 rebellion in Ireland. Again, this is just a quick revision video on question 5, should revolutions come from question 5, to write an account of the American Revolution. So the first thing we're going to look at is 4 reasons why the American Revolution broke out. And the first ones, one of the most well-known ones, is the unfair taxation. So examples of the unfair taxation would be the Navigation Act, whereby America controlled the price of imports into America, the Stamp Act, which was further tax put onto the American people, and the American slogan of no taxation without representation kind of encapsulates what the problem was for the Americans. Our second cause of the American Revolution is that there was no representation in the British Parliament. Again, we have this maxim, this motto, no taxation without representation. So the Americans were subject to the laws of Britain but didn't have any representatives in the Parliament in Britain. Another reason why the revolution broke out was the Boston Massacre. So this happened in 1770. They were protesting against the taxes, the introduction of the Stamp Act, and 6 people were dead. Now, the Stamp Act was repealed, but other taxes were put in place instead of it. Finally, a fourth reason for why the American Revolution broke out was enlightened thinking. So a man called Thomas Paine wrote this pamphlet known as Common Sense, whereby he said that America should be an independent, it should be its own country. Up until this point, a lot of people were just looking for representation in the British Parliament, or they were looking for a fair tax system. But Thomas Paine came along with this common sense thing and said that we need to rule ourselves. Now, we're just very briefly going to look at the course of the Revolutionary War. So it begins with the battles at Lexington and Concord in 1775, kind of skirmishes between the Americans and the British soldiers. In 1776, the 4th of July, as everyone knows, American Independence Day, they declared their independence with the Declaration of Independence. 1777 saw them win this big battle at Saratoga, and it was a real turning point in the war, because up until then no one really believed they could beat the British. Britain had the best army in the world. Not only did it give the Americans belief, but it also made the French think, you know what, maybe there was something going on here and we could really stick it to the British here. So the victory at Saratoga also helped bring the French into the war. After the victory at Saratoga, George Washington and von Steuben took the army to this really cold, derelict site known as Valley Forge in 1778, and the conditions were horrific. But it was in the winter, in these horrible conditions, that they trained their army. They trained and drilled, and they had a professional army, which was now able to stand up to the British. The next big thing after that, there's a lot of battles going on between 1778 and 1781, but the big battle, the decisive one, is the Battle of Yorktown in 1781, where General Cornwallis of the British army surrenders. So what were the results of the war? The 13 colonies became the United States. As the United States of America was born, there was 13 colonies and they became the United States. It inspired the French Revolution, and the influence of the Declaration of Independence was felt all over the world. Okay guys, so another question that can come up sometimes in question 5 in the accounts is the influence of the American Revolution on the French Revolution. So we're going to very quickly run through 4 quick points that show the influence that the American Revolution had on the French Revolution. So the first point is that America was rebelling against what they saw as unfair taxes. So they had the no taxation without representation. The Estates General was called in France in 1789 because the Third Estate were unhappy that they were having to pay the majority of taxes. So they could look to America and say, look, they reformed their tax system. They got something out of this. We can do the same. The second influence that America had on the French Revolution was the French actually became bankrupt as a result of the American War. France was in a pretty dodgy financial situation before the war broke out. Their 7 Years' War that they had with England in America a few years before the Revolutionary Wars had cost them a lot of money. So when the Revolutionary War happened, a lot of people in France said we shouldn't go, we're broke, but they couldn't resist sticking it to England one more time. So when the war was over, France was actually bankrupt. So that is an influence that the American Revolution had on France that caused the French Revolution. The third influence that the American Revolution had on France was the ideas of the Declaration of Independence. They inspired a very important document from the French Revolution known as the Rights of Man, which was published in August of 1789. Again, this even took it a step further than the Declaration of Independence and really laid out what the rights were of all men, no matter what colour, no matter what religion, no matter what nationality. The rights of all men were set out by the French in the French Revolution. And this was inspired by the Declaration of Independence. The final thing is you had men who were part of both revolutions. The French, as we said, helped the Americans during the Revolutionary Wars. And one of the most famous Frenchmen who helped was a guy called the Marquis de Lafayette. And he had the nickname of the Hero of the Two Worlds, which is a fantastic nickname. So he was the hero of the New World because he helped the Americans. And then he came back, and as the revolution kicked off, he was one of the leaders at the beginning of the revolution in 1789. So you had that influence of these people who were coming from a progressive society where they got rid of a king, where they'd set up a republic. And you also had guys like Thomas Paine who came over to France. Remember, Thomas Paine wrote the pamphlet Common Sense, which told the Americans, right, we should declare a republic. And he comes over to France during the Revolution. He actually ends up in prison in France during the Revolution for not being revolutionary enough. But just the idea of this man who had inspired a revolution coming over to the country inspired the French as well. So there's a lot of information in that. We will discuss it further in class, but that should get you guys through question 5 accounts on the American War of Independence. We will look in more detail at George Washington in our People in History question that we will be looking at next week or possibly the week after. Okay, thanks.